This is Van Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Streve Cloward. Is that how I pronounce your name? Cloward?
You nailed it. Yeah.
Cool. You're an entrepreneur, and the topic today we're going to get into is we're going to get into this right here. Rewiring my mind lets me stop letting my past get in the way of my future, which I think is a cool thing, or how you came to your life after 14 years of addiction, 14 months in prison. So we wanted to get into that, but we also want to let people know we're a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. And if you use the coupon code of Ghost, you can get 1 month free premium subscription. And so that's something we always let people know. We are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. Within a couple hours, we'll be on Newsly tonight. You can listen to Fam Electric Ghost on Newsly, and this episode will be there. So again, if people can check out your website, for those of you who are an audio podcast, we have a web link up, www.mindsetisthekey.net. So if people actually go to that mindsetisthekey.net, what do they find there?
Basically, that's just a page that they'll be able to put in their information and get a free book that I wrote about mindset. After, some of the things that helped me kind of, reclaim my life once I realized truly what the problem was.
Yeah, it's always good to find out, because I'm a cancer survivor. So there was a crucible moment in my life when I was 27, and it kind of caused me to get to where I am today. And people, you could have a disease like cancer, or you could have an addiction. You can have things like you had Crohn's that kind of led to an addiction. So yeah. I can understand, like, there are people who have cancer because of the pain, they can get addicted in the same way.
Absolutely.
So I'm totally familiar with that kind of what that route was, surviving that. I was able to kind of change my mindset. I totally understand it, because the person I was pre-cancer is not the person I am today. It totally made me less fearful. I actually became a podcaster, became a musician, did stuff that I was afraid to do. I lived in Japan for 2 years. I wouldn't have done that pre-cancer.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I get it.
Once you survive something, you get past that crucible moment, then you say, wow, I can actually do things I didn't think I could do. But, we will talk about what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, certainly. In fact, yeah, with cancer, I definitely see that. I'm my best friend from high school. In fact, there's a picture on my office wall right over there. I lost him to cancer, but it was interesting to see, how when he was diagnosed, just how important things became that we all take for granted. Not only family and where we focus our time and things, but what we put in our bodies, and just to see what it, how something can just rock our world to the core, to where, man, it doesn't take but a split second to just become determined that you make that change. My situation was really different from the mindset piece. When people, go to my main website or hear my podcast, Life After Addiction and Indictment, they think just, it's natural to think I went to prison because of my drug use and things, which was not the case, actually. I'd been sober for years. And I ended up going to prison over a big mortgage fraud case. I had a real estate appraisal firm and 6 guys working for me. Long story short, that my appraisal firm, due to some properties that we appraised and they funded loans off of, when they're big jumbos, they require 2 appraisals. They fund off the lowest of the 2, which they funded off my guys' appraisals. And the other appraisers, there was 2 other appraisers that did, these secondary appraisals, or the ones that were higher, I should say. And they were also invoicing the guy that was doing these double closes on these properties 5,000 appraisals, which is basically enticement, because he was telling them he'd pay them that, which, we didn't get paid anything other than the normal fee. But because they funded off ours, that's why I was thrown in that situation. And what happened with my mindset was, it broke me, to be honest. I remember my father was a dentist and he retired. I remember him telling me, and this was before I went to prison, that he didn't know, he kind of lost who he was. He didn't have an identity since he wasn't Dr. Cloward anymore, and I didn't really understand that until I came out of prison. And of course I couldn't be an appraiser anymore. So couldn't have a license to do that. So here I was just kind of twisting in the wind, and I totally got what he was saying. And then, of course, I couldn't have my own business for some time until I got off probation. And, so I just ended up getting a job at a neighbor's company. But, when you're in prison, it's pretty, you'd be happy if you could leave, you'd be happy as hell going to work at McDonald's or something,
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
just a
so
total restriction.
crazy. Yeah, and it's so crazy how quickly that perspective changes once you're back on the streets, though, But I would have done it, certainly. But once I got off probation, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but a lot of that was because I lost my confidence too.
Yeah, I would think that could shake your confidence when your whole, like you had been at a certain place and you kind of fell.
Yep.
And then you got punished by, the legal system.
Yep.
And then you have to pay that price. And then the society, after you leave, they continue to punish you because then they restrict you what you can do.
Yep.
And so you have to probably get into become an entrepreneur, be satisfied at what work you can get. And so it seems like the entrepreneur route might be the best way to kind of get your independence again, or start feeling better, because then you kind of control. Like we're, as an artist, like I'm a producer, I'm a musician, I'm a podcaster, have my own kind of business. And those things make you feel good because and I still have a side gig, but it's when you can control your own fate.
Exactly.
That can build your self-confidence. I can see how that can help you.
Yep. And I'd been an entrepreneur my whole life. I started mowing lawns when I was 13 and dragging the lawnmower around the neighborhood. And that's when it all started. But when you lack that confidence, it really holds you back, even though you've been there, done that. And, one of the things that I really let hold me back, besides my mindset, was I forgot how hard it was and the years it took to get to the place that I had gotten. And so I expected it, and that's what hurt me, because I expected it to just be like that when that wasn't ever reality in the first place. And so really the thing that made the difference was just learning that the way to build the confidence was to do the little things each day that we take for granted or we blow off because they don't seem important. And I'm talking things like the benefit you, the work on you, what we're putting in our mind, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to specific podcasts that will help you out, exercise, just those little things that when, over time, the compound effect isn't just real with money, it was real with this situation. I, of course, ended up getting coaches and things. And it took me, the fact of the matter is, I kind of sat in a victim stance, to be honest with you. And I frankly was a little lazy due to the lack of confidence, I think. And finally, I was with this group of guys in this coaching group. And, I've always believed in investing in myself. And I just decided it was time that I was going to give it everything I had, regardless, and I wasn't comfortable doing that at the time, because I knew that group had entrepreneurs who were doing well. And so I was intimidated, but I just decided I've got to lean into that fear and it'll help me. I've always known that the things that scare us and are hard to do are the things that, help us grow.
Fear is the big ceiling, because a lot of times it's like when I come in my cancer, like it was on my back and I couldn't move for like 6 months. I was on my back.
Wow.
And what I did is I was a mountain biker and I actually bought a frame while I was on my bed for 6 months, and I would buy components every week and build and have in anticipation that when I get out of that bed, I'm going to build this frame up and I'm going to start biking again.
Man, the power of that is
I had that plan, and I just, that wasn't a monetary thing. That was just a goal to get my, my body back. And, the first ride I ever did is like a Harley could get anywhere. Yeah. And I didn't give up. It's just that, and I would feel sick and, you had to build yourself back up. It's like a rocky thing. You got to build your momentum. And it was like, I couldn't really ride with my partners until I got to a certain place. It took me months before I could actually get any other guys to ride with. But it was just that goal, setting that goal. And it was hard, you get a couple, like, you don't even get a mile. and then you had to stop.
Yep.
You could give up
You're taking action.
or you keep on going.
Yep.
I think that mindset, right?
And that's the difference between the person that would be in your shoes, that would lay on that bed and just say, not going to do anything, when I get better, if I get better, they might even think, which is going to affect them from getting better,
Yeah.
Then they're going to struggle like crazy. And, the fact that the key is taking action, even if it's just little, and focusing on those little wins. It's so easy as, I think, human beings, they say the subconscious has somewhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day running through us. And about 90% of them are frankly negative, to protect us. And so
but you're pessimistic.
yeah. So if you're not aware of what's happening, it's kind of like addiction. Until you realize you have a problem and admit it, you're not going to get over it at all. And if you're not paying attention to what's happening in your mind, and if you grab onto those negative thoughts, most people, and I'm guilty of it for sure, that's what was happening. And I'd be lying if I said it doesn't happen occasionally. I catch it nowadays pretty quick, but you take yourself further in the negative, and that's how you get yourself in a place that can get pretty ugly.
That's what I think with the whole mentoring thing, like being a producer, I'm kind of like a teacher when it comes to like music. And what I always run into, like a lot of young musicians, is like they'll give me all this stuff, right? And they're kind of scared to show me something. I'm like, hey, the thing that you're scared to show me, I want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to hear the thing that you're the most fearful of showing anybody. Because what I find with musicians is the thing they think nobody wants or to hear is actually it. That is the thing that makes them who they are.
Isn't that interesting?
But they're always like scared of it because they're trying to compare themselves to other people.
Yep.
And then I try to equate that as like, well, that's very similar to like when I'm doing my day job, and I'm a designer. I design software. And you get people who are scared of ideas, and you get some guy who's like holding on to something, and it's like, hey, bring that to the table, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Because like the things that people always are fearful of usually are the things that actually bring things forward.
Yeah.
They bring your life forward too. Because like once you actually get more comfortable, then you find yourself like, oh, I can end up being in this position, and I never even thought I could be there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The fear of worrying what others will think is the worst fear of all, because the truth of the matter is, what we believe others are thinking, 99% of the time, they're not thinking dick about us.
They don't even know that. You're thinking they think the worst of you, and they don't even know anything about you.
Yeah.
And so you're coming into the table, and you're thinking, oh, they all see me as this.
Yeah.
And then if you ask them, it's like, well, I didn't see you that way. And you're like, oh, because you probably think the worst of yourself. That tend to be a problem. The people tend to beat themselves up.
Yes. For sure.
And they always talk to these therapists, oh, love yourself. And then people say, what's that? That's psychobabble, but it's real. The people who really make it actually have a certain level of people would think, well, that's arrogance. It's not really arrogance. It's like, that's confidence.
Exactly.
Like there's a certain level of confidence. If you ever look at musicians, like how can Mick Jagger like swagger on the stage like that?
Yeah.
Because he had to get that certain level, and you could say, well, he's arrogant. Yeah, but he's doing it. Yeah. So you think, how did he get to do that? And you look at musicians, they have to get beyond that fear to be able to feel that comfortable on the stage.
Yeah.
It's different levels of who could be a Jagger or a Bowie or, whatever.
Sure.
But like, yeah, that is a certain thing you can connect to, that you do have to get to that certain level to believe in yourself.
Right. And there's no doubt there can be arrogance in some people, but most of the time it is confidence. The people that are judging them and thinking they're arrogant, if you really look at it, and there's a great author lady out there named Byron Katie. And, when I read her book, she has this thing called the turnaround. The simple way to put it is, there's questions she walks you through, but when you answer them, you realize you're really talking about yourself, not the person. So it's that old saying, when you're pointing one finger at someone, you got three pointing back at you. And that's really the truth, because we are speaking negatively about others typically because of the lack of way we feel.
Yeah. The haters. Like if you think about like everybody I tell them like when they're talking to creative people, it's like you gotta think about like you're a creative, you're willing to put yourself out there, you're willing to be criticized.
Yeah.
Everybody, the critic that comes at you that isn't a musician, that never picked up a guitar, never picked up a piano, and then they're gonna say something.
Yeah.
Is at least you put it out there.
Exactly.
And in different time periods, some people go back and Led Zeppelin showed up, critics hit them hard and said they were terrible. Now you go back and act like they loved them. They didn't. They didn't say they were great. They actually said they were the opposite. So then over time, then they suddenly said, "Oh, they're awesome." It's like, really? That's not what you said in 72.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So you gotta believe in yourself.
So true. Yep. But like I said, the thing that finally did it, I was thinking, oh, well, I'm going to hire this person or that person. And, the bottom line is no one was coming to save me. It's up to us individually, and then one of the big things that, I did when I was working with that group of guys, and I created what is called a conscious self-creation statement. And that is things as simple as just think of the I ams or the I haves and speak as if you already are in that place. It doesn't matter what's about. It can be financial, it can be spiritual, it can be mental, it can be relational, it can be anything. And so I created one of those, and I, like I said, I didn't have confidence. I was struggling financially, and I just got to the point where I memorized that. And they said, for it to have the most power, if you see it, write it, read it, and hear it every day.
Yeah,
I didn't do that.
It. You make it manifest. Exactly. You have to self-actualize.
Exactly.
And you have to what people don't realize is like when you actually speak out your objective.
Yep.
You don't keep it inside. You actually verbalize it. You actually write it down. But even it's more powerful if you actually actually vocalize it.
That's what I did every day when I got in the shower. So I did say it and I heard it because I'd say it out loud. So as I stepped in the shower, boom.
Something in your brain when you actually say it.
Yeah.
That does something rather than just thinking it.
Yeah, words have power. And I don't think we as human beings understand. I'm convinced 100% we're energetic, spiritual beings, and everything's energy. And that's how it works. And so when you put it out, because I remember when I first saw the movie, The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and I totally bought into it, but I didn't, to the level. There's a difference between saying, thinking, oh, I'd like this life and I'd like to have this and I'd like to be married to this and have, this family or whatever it is. That's one thing, but you have to really go to the next level and put yourself emotionally how you would feel if that's where you were at. And, I can tell you when I started doing that statement and focused on how I would feel and, how I would have more confidence, the anxiety would be gone. The stress of finances would be gone. And within 2 years, I had everything had shifted to everything I said, but two things. And those manifested 2 years later, but, I can't deny that.
Well, the thing is being a musician, we can believe in the idea of the muse. And the muse is this kind of universal thing that all artists, when we pick up our guitar, pick up our piano, and we can just improvise.
Yeah.
We can kind of feel everything. And really what it is all that practice we did. Yeah. But then everything we love, all the musicians that we were inspired by, and then the moment itself.
Yeah.
So when you trust yourself as an artist, that I could just start playing something and it will just fall together. And you don't start and stop because it just kind of comes together. You trust your instincts and you just go with it. And it just becomes this thing. It's well, how can these guys do that? Because you start to believe in yourself and you just go with it.
Yeah.
And and in jazz bands, it's everybody kind of can do that. You just
that is so cool.
Go into a jazz, you just flow, and you're everybody just kind of feeds off it, and you're wow, we didn't even plan it, and it's coming together because there's a level of trust.
Yeah,
you gotta trust yourself. You trust your other fellow musicians, and you start thinking like a team. It's like a sports team.
Yeah,
you start to just trust the instincts of your fellow members of the band. There's members of a team. And if you can think about, if you can work in, a job like that, or what you want to do, and you can get people around you that kind of have that intuition and that belief, then you can be very powerful. And he's like, instead of having the naysayers, they're saying, "Oh, well, what are you doing? Well, why are we doing that?" But start and stop and start and stop. And it's like, yeah, it's good to self-analyze, but there's certain things that you got to learn how to like kind of run with it.
Yeah, that's in fact that's what I got stuck in a bit was, and I called it surface distraction. There's you have to be willing to take massive imperfect action. And I always, because I lacked confidence and I wasn't sure, I'd waste my time on things like, oh, well, I better get my website up. I better get business cards. I better get this, all these dumb things that you got to make money. So you should be focused on the money making activities, which is sales, and it's crazy how, you can get stuck in that, but you just got to take action and know that the way that you learn is through failure too,
Yeah, making mistakes. Like if you think about musicians,
try to make them.
Yeah, think about musicians. There was one musician who was a great bass player. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was basically giving a master class and say, "I'm going to use nothing what people call all the wrong notes. I'm going to mix scales and do all the wrong notes, but have this groove that crosses scales and show you that if you have the intention and you have that groove, you can cross all these notes and they could be what you would think they would be bad notes, but they won't be." And he went and showed that you could just go through all these things, and there was like, there's no bad note. Listen to watch how I'm playing, and I'm not hitting any bad note. So the whole idea is like the happy accident in music is very critical. Like a lot of times we just go with something and say, "Hey, hit the wrong key," but then you recover from it. You actually say, "Yeah, maybe I didn't intend to go in that key. Maybe I'm a little bit off the beat, but we can take advantage of that and go a different direction." And a lot of great music was developed because people actually learned how to recover from what some people might have perceived as a mistake.
Yeah.
But actually turned it into an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems like so many products and things get created that way. You think it's a mistake, and next thing you know, you come up with something that's better than what you were planning.
Viagra was a mistake. They didn't intend to do that.
That's right.
I think some aspartame, it was sweet and they didn't intend to even use it as a sweetener. And they're like, "Oh, this thing's sweet. We can use it." So a lot of times it happens like in the engineering, and people, "Oh, I didn't plan on doing this." And they're, "Oh, well, look what it does." And then you go off and do that, because you got to learn to recover from that kind of unforeseen thing.
Yeah.
And take advantage of it. And writers talk about I go and do stream of consciousness. I talk to authors, and I had a plan, had an outline. Then I went and did the stream of consciousness, and I took the character a totally different direction than what I had planned. And it's like, it actually was better than what I planned.
Yeah.
And then trusting yourself to kind of know that sometimes you should do that, because sometimes just because you didn't plan it doesn't mean the universe didn't plan it for you.
Bingo. Exactly. So true.
Yeah. And so I think, it's hard to judge where you are in your life that you can accept those things. Because some people, I think the problem with a lot of people, they have, beliefs that they think are truths, but they're really just beliefs, right? And so they're
100%.
acting on things they think are truths, but they're just beliefs. And they might have a belief because their grandpa said you're no good.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's like, that's not a truth, but you believe it. Yeah. And then you act that way until you don't believe it.
Exactly. Beliefs are not good or bad. They're nothing. They're just beliefs. I mean, they can be good and go bad, but they're simply just beliefs.
Yeah, especially if they're not true, then they don't help you. Like if they say, "Well, you're no good," that you can never amount to anything.
Ask, where did they come from?
Yeah, where did you get that from? So those are the things that I think over time, when you go to get to a mentoring relationship, because sometimes you need that person to like, maybe somebody needs to go mindset is the key, because they're kind of on the edge and they know something's not right, but they can't figure out how to solve it. Yeah. So then they go to a mentor, they go to a shaman, they go to a life coach, and they say, "Well, what is it that I need to do?" Because they don't know where to start. Right. So exactly. I think this is where it comes into like people look at like what feels good to me. They try different things. We've had tons of people on the podcast, and and not every approach is right for everybody. But sometimes something speaks to you, right? And then they say, "Hey, mindset is the key. That speaks to me." So then, like, I'm going to check that out. And that's how, it's a personal preference. That's what people do. But, that's the whole point of like why I talk to people, because, is like you get different perspectives and you open the door.
Exactly. Yep. It's like there's a billion, life coaches out there these days. And, the bottom line is the guy that's, I choose to work with, or the guy in the next room chooses to work with, and so on. It's like you said, it's who resonates, what feels right. Different personalities mesh right with certain people, and, it just takes all types.
Because that idea, like rewiring your brain, like, and I'm a software guy, right? So
Uh-huh.
we tend to say, well, we have to kind of like rejigger everything. Like we have to rethink, because a lot of times what happens to us is like, I was a COBOL guy, grew up in the '70s mainframes,
Okay.
and then servers came, like Oracle came, then now we have blockchain. So every time there's some new tech that totally changes the paradigm.
Hmm.
So we have to kind of rewire what we were thinking. And I know some guys are like, I'm a mainframe guy, I'm going to stay a mainframe guy. Say, well,
Yeah.
that's fine, but the world's not mainframe; it's going into blockchain. So what are you going to do?
Exactly.
It's like you kind of have to you could live there, or you could kind of decide to maybe rewire your mindset.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You always have to be evolving. You know, like you said, you have to adapt to the changes, and especially in tech, it changes so fast.
Yeah.
I, like I said, that conscious self creation statement, but I'm going to do something different tomorrow. I had a guy on my podcast yesterday, and he's a software guy. He's been dealing with AI for 15 years, and he's worked for the biggest companies out there and been recognized by presidents. And I mean, I was fascinated. I
Mm.
mean, he dropped some bombs that just blew my mind. And he has because he said it was how to use AI with meditation. And I was like, how
That's
the
a different
hell do
way.
you do that?
I
I
never
mean,
thought about that.
it was crazy because he walked me through it, and it's very similar, but he walked through the steps of, like, you want to be very intentional. I think that's important that the listeners pay attention to. It's so easy to get caught up in life and just go through life,
Hmm.
and then you're just going to get what life brings and dishes out. Or you can be intentional and decide what you want and then map it out. And so he talked about how, to write these prompts in like Chat GPT that outline, what you want within 30 days or whatever it is. It could be based on a vacation, whatever. It doesn't matter. It could be
Okay.
business. And, be very specific and detailed as you do it. And, tell it how many words you want it to be, the whole 9 yards. AI kicks it out. And then he said, and he's done this and had a bunch of people do it. And then you read it every day.
Oh, it's kind of
And
like a meditation. Kind of like, well, I'm a
it's
Buddhist.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a meditation, but you're just kind of getting that next level input to help you really define in more
You're getting
detail
real time input, like
what you're
versus
looking
like
for.
what people do with like spirituality. I'm a Buddhist, like
Yeah,
Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. I read the text that this Buddhist monk wrote, right,
yeah,
back in the
I love that stuff.
1600s, right? And but with the Chat GPT, you're taking advantage of everything that's in the freaking that's out there on the net. So
Exactly.
the AI goes out and looks at everything on the net and then comes up with something where when you're in some spiritual practice, you're going, what these monks or these priests or what they wrote,
Yeah,
their interpretation. And maybe it's a different priest or a different monk and they have a slightly different, but it's still based on a paradigm. If you go
yeah.
out there to the net,
You get a
it's so
compilation.
it's so wide, it can
Everything.
be crossed in multiple spiritual practices,
Yeah.
multiple concepts that it's coming at you with it, not as narrow. It's probably
Right.
a lot wider. So that's very interesting to me. That
Yeah.
yeah, that's an approach that would put you on a different plane because you're not. A lot of people you're in that narrow lane,
Exactly.
and that's going to make it something that's more expansive.
Yep.
So it's going to be. Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah, I was
Think about that
fascinated
more.
by it. I was like, dang. And the thing was crazy from an AI standpoint is, I'm a marketer as well, just for my companies, but I had, one of the guys I learned Facebook ads for like 8 years ago. He's had this AI course. I've just kind of blown off, because I've got Chat GPT and I use it a little, but man, I was using it in ways that was so pathetic, because I personally don't have that, and I hate to say that because once again, I say words are powerful, and that's why I'm not creative, because I always say I'm not the creative guy. I'm more the executioner, executor.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it.
And so, but I decided I was out of town last week and for my anniversary. And by the way, I'm going to say this because most people would be shocked, but with everything I went through, 14 years of addiction, going to prison, losing everything, being an ass to my wife during my addiction, I celebrated my 33-year anniversary last week. That's why I was out of town. But I bought this course for $97 from my mentor in marketing, and I was blown away. I'm only like through probably an hour's worth of content. There's probably 10. And I'm like, there's more value right there. I would have paid 10 grand for that, knowing what it is because of what it's done already for me to know how to use a tool the right way, and the plugins that I had no idea about that do specific things. And I mean, so it's just this week I've implemented things that I would have normally been hiring people to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation. That's the whole thing.
I'm getting the job done better than the professionals I could even hire, and saving a ton of time.
Well, the AI, the whole point of it going forward is that, in terms of giving you like a workforce, they're giving a person the ability to automate, at a level that you would think, oh, only a big guy could do that. Only this big firm could do that. That it gives you all these automation tools, and it doesn't necessarily replace bodies, because eventually there's other things that people are going to do. And so it does replace certain jobs, and I understand that. But but in terms of like, there's a lot of stuff that I do as a podcaster that I have to do all these steps
exactly
to do all these automations and put my stuff all where I want it to go. And the AI tools can actually do that. And even as a musician, there are tools where like I could go into a session if I have an AI tool within my recording system, and I say, hey, give me a beat that's like something off of like kind of blue, like Miles Davis, and give me a drum beat that's kind of like that. It will go do that.
Yeah, it's just
and then it was like, well, give me a Thelonious Monk like bass line from this song, and it will do that. It won't do exactly the line. It will get something like it.
Yeah.
And then I can go and play some piano original over it. And then say, hey, give me some settings that sound like a Fleetwood Mac Rumors album, the way that the board was set there. And then it can start to do stuff like that. That stuff is just amazingly productive.
Oh, yeah.
It can help your creativity and allow you to do things that you couldn't have done, because I couldn't afford to do those things. And now I have capabilities that I didn't have as one person.
Exactly. And I was worried, kind of like you mentioned, because I've had people ask me about it, and I've frankly wondered how it would be. So I specifically asked this guy, he's an Indian guy, he came to the States. He lives in Canada now, 23 years, but he started writing code and stuff, way early on, and he focused on where he thought things would be going. I mean, he obviously had a gift, in my opinion, but the numbers will blow your mind. And I'll get the one right as far as what AI is going to do in the world economy from a financial standpoint by 2030 is $10 trillion. He then compared what like the internet did, and these are the numbers I'll get wrong. I don't remember for sure, but they were in the low billions.
Billions, yeah.
And one was like, and then the people worry about, machines will take over a lot of jobs, but if you think of what jobs came after the internet came about, jobs that weren't in this world before.
Yeah, there's all types of things where there's a lot of jobs where people can be more creative.
Yes.
But there's a lot of jobs where, suddenly you can host your own show. You could have like an eBay like company. You can go into business for yourself and do what the AI can't do. Exactly. Which is still like a human being can create an eBay shop and create a product.
Yeah.
AI may not be able to, maybe in the future you can do it, but the human ability to be creative at that level and create like a unique piece of music or a unique product or a unique whatever, that's the thing that human beings still have.
Yep.
And they'll be able to take you from doing a job at McDonald's or a job at Burger King, not to put it down, but suddenly you can use your ability.
Yep.
So it will free you up. And you think about Star Trek, like where they were freed up
Bingo.
to do all this stuff, and they were able to go way ahead
It's going to
because they
create a
didn't have
better
to think
world.
about the little things.
Yep.
The computer can do those things, but you still have a Spock,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That was still, on par with what the AI was doing or beyond it. But
Yeah.
you still have to have people. In
Yep.
the Star Trek world, you still had to have people.
Yep.
That everything was a drone, everything was a robot. And it's still always going to have people for certain things.
Exactly. Yeah. Before the internet, you couldn't do the quote, this is just the laptop life, meaning there's so many things. You can be a coach to do anything anywhere in the world if you have your laptop, in a sense,
Yeah,
with
I
the
could go
technology.
be in Japan.
We could
Yeah,
do
I can
this,
be
Jim.
in
You could be in
Japan.
Japan. Yeah. Anywhere in the world.
Right. I could be in Brazil. I don't have to be, I'm in New Hampshire, but
Yeah.
you can be anywhere you want to be. And I talk to people in South Africa and China and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And it's just because the technology.
Yep.
And the technology of AI can go and allow me to automatically be on, multiple networks at once.
Yeah.
To be able to go and do my SEA automatically and tailor make it for the time that I'm running. That's where the AI comes in. It's like, oh, based on the time this is on, this is the SEA that you should have, SEO that you should have.
Yeah.
And this is where you should be sending it. And that's where the computer can know stuff that I don't know.
Exactly.
And then that's what's going to go and do stuff that maybe a person doesn't know, because it can scan the whole net, come back with some data that a person wouldn't have.
Exactly.
So that's where the advantages of those automation tools and this ability to customize things for people. So then people can have customization at a level they never had.
Exactly. Yep.
So you can have something where you bought this piece of software and it's like it built for everybody. The AI of the future is that each piece of software could be totally customized, like almost to your DNA level of who you are.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's not something people ever thought about. And it's like that. So that right there is mind blowing, where you could go with stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. It's to me, after, once again, we talked about earlier, it's, perspective is everything. We can't see what we can't see, we don't know what we don't know. And so to have somebody who's an expert and so forward thinking in his world, that he can see it to where he can frame it to me, that, man, I didn't have any fear at all. I had total excitement. I mean, of course, there can be some nefarious things that.
Well, there are bad things about
absolutely,
it.
But
on the negative side, that you can.
I don't want to put a chip in me. Or
Just the other side out there, intellectual property. People should own it, right? So your AI might not understand copyright laws,
right?
Might not understand, digital distribution laws, and so it goes and grabs an image and uses it, and it doesn't pay the person who created the image,
right?
Then that becomes a problem. So that's where a lot of artists are saying, like, hey, well, for music, we have digital rights management. So if somebody tries to grab something, they get a strike. But a lot of graphic artists have problems with AI because they'll grab stuff, and because it doesn't have digital rights management on it, it uses it. Right. And it's actually it didn't create something from scratch. It actually grabbed somebody's work.
Exactly.
And so that's where, if they got to get the rights management right, so that artists don't get pissed off. So I do want to acknowledge to the artists out there, I do understand that issue, and there are some negatives about that, but hopefully that all gets worked out.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, there was a few plugins that I got exposed to last week that do exactly what you're talking about. Do get you those images based on what you ask it to, but once again, those are on a platform you're having to subscribe to. But there's obviously going to be some of those issues that you're talking about. But I think that those will be caught pretty quick too and solved if.
Which what happened with like samples, like with the music industry. Samples first came out there was no rules. Then they actually have to clear the sample, which means you have to pay for it. Gotcha. So if you're an artist and use a sample, now you have to actually pay the person who wrote it. And so if you do an album that has 100 samples, every one of those samples has to get paid for. Yep. Where when the people first started doing it, the systems let you do it without paying the people. Then what happens is the lawyers came in and said, no, you got to pay the people.
Was that what Napster was doing, giving free music? Is that what?
Well, Napster was actually giving free albums. What I'm talking about is like if you're a hip hop artist or an EDM artist,
someone just using it,
and you're using a clip, from like a Bowie album.
Yep.
before the lawyers got into it, you didn't have to clear the sample, and you could put that on a record, and you didn't pay Bowie.
I
You
see.
didn't
Yeah.
pay Brian Eno.
Yeah.
But then suddenly the record company said, hey, you should be paying them. And so they made a structure that if you go to release now, before you go to publish to Spotify or Apple, you have to actually clear the sample. And
That's
you have
the way
to
it
say,
should be.
are your, they'll ask you, are your
Yeah.
samples cleared? If they're not, then you can't publish. So
That's the way
that's
it
what's
should
going to
be.
happen, with AI. It's going to have to do that with
Yeah.
with like that level, and
Yeah.
it'll happen. But
Yeah.
sometimes the tech gets ahead of the lawyers.
Yeah. That's right. So true. They catch up.
That's where we are right now. It's way ahead of the lawyers, so people are like putting cease and desist orders.
Yeah.
Because what it's doing now is people are going and saying, "Hey, take Beyonce's voice and have her sing a song she never did."
Right. That's right.
And then her lawyers say, "You can't do that without paying me."
Yep.
And so, that's what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy.
But yeah, I mean, to manifest things in your life that you've always wanted, is a hard thing, because I think what we were talking about before is the fear.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about AI, there's fear about that, because it's going to steal stuff, it's going to take people's jobs. It's like there's always something, but like you have to embrace where you are at any point in time. People didn't know what the net was.
Yeah.
And I grew up with laptops back. I'm a child of the 70s. 79, 80 laptops showed up and said, oh, these are going to be the end of the world. It's going to cause all these problems. It's going to take all the jobs away. They were talking about that back then.
Yeah.
It's like, and they're like,
So
well,
crazy.
not really. They became programming jobs.
Yeah.
My job as a
Right.
business system analyst.
Yeah. Think of all the jobs that computers did create. Same.
Yeah, and all
concept.
the drones. People got to build the drones. They got to maintain the drones.
Yep.
You got to, to be all these blue collar jobs to actually fix the drones, to fix all the electronic devices and repair the robotics, because the stuff will break.
Exactly.
So there's still going to be jobs like plumbers or electricians. They're going to be guys that have to fix these machines.
Yeah. Yep.
Or design the machine, which is where you really want to be.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
I always tell people, learn the math, and then you'll be all right. Like the whole thing about this future is if you learn the math and you learn the logic, you'll be totally on top of it. Because it's like kind of like in my example with Spock. If you know that logic, nobody can mess with you. Like, because then you can work in this kind of modern world is based on that kind of Spock type of logic. Like if you can get into that and understand it,
right,
then you'll be able to work anywhere. You can work on the beach.
Exactly.
Anywhere you want to be.
Yeah. The more powerful the skill set you have, the more money you can demand. It's no different than looking at doctors. The brain surgeon's going to make more than the physician.
Well, also you got to have people that can sell. Like salesmen have always been around. My father was an insurance agent, and there's always a need for salespeople.
Yeah,
because you got to sell whatever the new thing is.
Yep.
And so I believe the salespeople will still be heavily out there. I mean, marketing and sales is you just selling. It's like, what is the widget you are selling?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a different widget, right?
Exactly. Yep. That's it. It's a fascinating time for sure.
So you mentioned like you kept your marriage together for like 33 years through all of these things, and a lot of people probably like, wow. Because a lot of people like have maybe less of other people have different impacts in their lives, but like it was like, wow, I didn't anticipate that statement.
Well, we were 2 years in, so when the opiates took over, of course my brain chemistry changes, and so I mean I was pretty ruthless at times. Meaning, I mean I wasn't mean or abusive physically ever, and frankly for the most part not mentally, but you're not present, number one. But basically told my brain I believed that I didn't love my wife, is what I was telling myself. We knew each other for a long time, and we were just friends. We'd go on double dates. She'd be with someone else and I'd be with a girl I was engaged to a couple times. And so when I started believing that, she came home from work one day and I just said, I don't love you. I'm leaving. And over a 18-month period, I came and went on 3 different occasions. But by the grace of God, I got sober, and we were separated at the time. I had our second son separated. She was living with her folks. I was staying in the house, or first house we had built, and I was really sick with the flu. And she was a nurse, but she worked at the physician's office that I had gone to since I was a kid. And of course, all of the nurses and stuff I knew. And so I wasn't going to call there. And then she's at her parents' house. I don't want to call there. But after day 28, I'm not kidding. That movie, 28 days, and what they talk about, the fog lifting, that is no joke. And that fog lifted. And, that's when I was sick with the flu. And so this was back when, everything, corporations didn't buy all the doctors out and all this garbage. So she could bring a shot home. She'd bring a Z-Pack. She could do whatever, the doctors just say no problem.
Yeah.
So I was just wanting to get a shot of an antibiotic or whatever, but I also wanted to talk to her because I realized, like, what in the hell am I doing?
Yeah, you realize, that's your soulmate. And
I was told, I believed that I was going to be cool, okay, being a weekend dad, I mean, if you can help that, that's not what, I believe in divorce if you absolutely can't be happy together. But other than that, it takes work, and
it's always a battle. I mean, it's not a battle, but
we're just different beings.
Yeah, because it's like there's a lot of people get into this idea of marriage and they think it's some fairy tale.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? It's like life is not like the book, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is, and it's not always perfect. And people always think it's gonna, I think they think it's gonna change something that was wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of problems, what I found when I went to therapy is like the things that this other person ain't gonna fix you. Right?
Exactly.
You guys are gonna grow together, and and each one person has their own things. If you guys are thinking that each of you is gonna fix the other, then that's a problem, because that's probably never gonna happen. What's happened. You're gonna grow together. You're gonna have to fight through things together. Maybe you fight against each other, but you realize it's like, hey, it's not always a bed of roses, but it's better to be together than sitting by yourself in some motel.
Right. Because really, grass is not greener. You're just changing one set of problems with another. So how are you going to deal with those? So once I learned, number one, that I did love her, and that I didn't want to be that weekend dad. The craziest thing took place is this was would have been in 1992. And so people weren't carrying around cell phones for the most part. There's some brick phones around, but I didn't have one. She didn't have one, but she had one mounted in her vehicle. So her parents, they live about 5 minutes from the local grocery store. On a Sunday night is when I called, but of course I didn't want to call her parents' house because I felt like an idiot, and so, I mean, there's a Mormon family. They don't go to the store on Sundays, and she drives from their house to the store. There's a 5-minute gap while she's in the car, and I called that phone while she was in the car.
Oh, so you got her.
Yeah, and I was like, told her about, being sick, and then I said, I don't really know what to say, but we need to talk, because she didn't honestly know the pill thing. Like, I hit it that well.
Oh, she didn't know about it.
Yeah, she didn't know I was abusing them day in and day out. And so, anyway, she came over and we talked. And frankly, I mean, I had been dating a girl, and even though her parents are really religious people, they did a drug on, almost, we're going on pushing 18 months. And so it's time to move on. I mean, I think my attorney, when I run into him occasionally to this day, because he's just lazy ass, but I'm glad he was, because we should have been divorced in that time frame. And
the attorney was taking too long.
Yeah, just kind of being lazy, dragging his feet,
Well, that's probably the best thing that happened.
Yeah. And so, we put it back together. But then bottom line, like you were saying, it does take work, but it's like anything. Why is it that we put effort in to our relationship before we're married, living together, tight, whatever it is, you put effort into thinking about what you're going to do on the date, you know what I mean? But then once you're tight with someone, whether it's married or not, it's then it's like we take the things that matter most, we love the most for granted.
Yeah, you
So,
take it for granted.
yeah,
This thing
you
is
have
supposed to
to,
be.
if you
Yeah,
want it to
you
grow,
still got
you
to.
got to water it,
Yeah, well, all the effort on the first day trying to impress,
Yeah.
well, maybe you should try to keep some of that, because if you don't, then things get boring, or you get bored, or
Yep.
you think it's like there's something, the grass is greener, and it's like usually you're gonna bring your problem to the next relationship
100%.
because it usually didn't solve it, and it's still inside you, and it's still gonna be there.
Yep.
And then you're gonna run into another issues, and it's like you kind of keep on chasing something. It's like you're chasing this thing that's not gonna actually ever find it. You're not
Exactly.
gonna find what you're looking for. There's not nirvana. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah, you got to find it where you can. And a lot of times, like, things there's beautiful things that you just neglect or don't take advantage, don't see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think is once you start to open your mind, you start to see what happens. The day to day things, like you said at the beginning.
Right.
Those day to day things that people take for granted. It's like victory, and being a cancer survivor. You're like, every day that you can breathe after you survive a level 3 or level 4.
Jeez, no
It's
kidding.
like that is like, people was like, oh, well, I don't know if I like life. It's like, ask a cancer survivor if they like
No
life.
kidding. Yeah. What is
you
that
know,
song? What is it? I think it's, oh, I think Tim McGraw, live like you were dying,
yeah.
take each day as
It
it
changes your
last.
perspective. Your melancholy, I can get it, and depression's real.
Absolutely.
But once you start to understand, like, yeah, you got to start looking at the positive.
Yep.
Just getting up. That sometimes it's a very positive thing.
No
Because
kidding.
there are people that you lost your freedom. You were in jail,
Yep.
right? So getting up and not being in jail, getting up and having a house, getting up and be able to go to a job. Maybe it's not the perfect job, but you're actually still here
Exactly.
instead
And
of in another world. But you wait till you get there.
I was pretty depressed for the first few months. I know we got to wrap up, but I was depressed for the first few months in prison. And I got a letter from a friend of my mom's who I never met. I didn't even meet her till like 6 years after I got home. And she told me this one thing, and this is so powerful. And she said, Steve, I don't know what it's like in there. I can't imagine, and I'm not going to pretend I know. But if you can go to bed each night and focus on 3 things that day to be grateful for, I promise you it will make a difference. And I started doing that night, and I wasn't depressed anymore, because you can't be depressed when you're in gratitude. And if you start each morning, focus on gratitude, it's the best way to start.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get into the mind, if you can get into reading and try to do as much as you can, you can make something that felt like constraining, that you can free your mind.
Yeah.
You can actually do a lot, with that. But yeah, we do have short time. And I want to let people know again, go to mindsetisthekey.net and check out that again. Maybe tell people again what they find there. And then I'll close it off for tonight. Thank you for being on the Family Liquor Co show.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, just mindsetisthekey.net. You'll get access to a free ebook, and just so you know, you're not going to get any emails after it that are trying to sell you anything. There's none of that. It's your book. You take it, use it. I just hope it makes a difference. But anyway, I appreciate you having me on, man. This has been fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You bet. My pleasure. Take care.
Have a good night.
See you later.